The NES was an amazing console, pulling the video game industry out of the doldrums of the video game crash of 1983 and spreading the way of gamers TM that has continued to this day. However, it was limited by its hardware, which made adaptations of certain media difficult, wrestling video games included. So when 8-bit consoles bit the proverbial curve in lieu of the 16-bit menaces, you'd expect all wrestling games to make a jump quality-wise, right? Well, mostly. If you want to know which games are worth your time, you're in the right place, as I will go over all North American released wrestling games from the dump to the penthouse to see which ones are worth throwing down with your friends with. Sadly, this excludes Japanese only games, so no Fire Pro Wrestling, but I recommend checking it out anyway with the English patch. Let's head into the ring. This is every Super Nintendo wrestling game, from worst to best. The only WCW game released on the Super Nintendo, WCW Super Brawl Wrestling, has a lot to live up to among the WWF glutton hogging all the action. Well, it lives up to Jim Herd's wet dream, cause the game isn't very good. WCW Super Brawl Wrestling was released on the Super Nintendo in 1994 by Beam Software and FCI Inc. A Sega Genesis version was originally planned, but it never made it out of the territories. You have your option of single match, tag team match, and arcade gauntlet ultimate challenge mode with your choice of 12 characters, which has highlights like Ric Flair, Vader, Sting, and some good pulls, such as the Steiner Brothers and Ron Simmons. Pre-Goldust Dustin Rhodes is here, which is pretty nuts since he's still regularly wrestling to this day. The character variety is pretty cool, but what the hell is with this character select screen with the super compressed digital pictures and the characters periodically yelling at you? Weird. Anyway, gameplay consists of an isometric view of you, your opponents, and the ref in the ring, with the wrestlers shuffling around like they're in an old folks home. Every wrestler shares the same moveset with basic forearms, drop kicks, and some suplexes thrown in for good measure. The only thing differentiating its character is their finishing moves, which could consist of the same basic moves, only harder, or more powerful slams and holds to cause your opponent to submit. With this lack of differences, it falls on the basic combat to be entertaining, and unfortunately, it just isn't. Fighting is super clunky with strikes more often than not going through your opponent and a toss-up whether your slams will connect or not. Pinning your opponent boils down to reducing your opponent's health bar low, and once you find a cheesy attack pattern, that's all you'll stick to. This gets really old by like the third match playing this game, which complements the amount of not fun you are already having. The graphics are already super choppy and with no music, it just makes the game completely awkward to play. WCW had its trouble in the early 90s before the smiling Cheshire Cat named Eric Bischoff made his way in, and this game did not help things in the slightest. Well, looky here. Fried Hot Dog Grandpa is back on the menu, everyone. WWF Super WrestleMania was released in 1992 for both the Super Nintendo and Genesis by Acclaim, Sculpture Software, and Death Rainbow. A simulation wrestling game. You control your chosen wrestlers, they battle other wrestlers in either a standard match, tag team match, or Survivor Series 4-on-4 match. The SNES version actually lacks a gauntlet arcade ladder mode that the Genesis has, which definitely affects replay value. The differences don't stop there, however. Signature moves are missing from the Super Nintendo version, which makes all characters pretty much play identical, with standard strikes, slams, and other such maneuvers. The characters themselves are also different. Well, not mechanically, but just by appearance. The only characters that are shared between the two versions are Hulk Hogan, Ted DiBiase, and Randy Savage. While the Super Nintendo gets off with just a few good gets like The Undertaker, Legion of Doom, and Natural Disasters, Genesis wins out by having the GOAT, Papa Shango, and Shawn Michaels, whatever. Wrestling boils down to a standard reduce your opponent's health as low as you can with strikes and moves before you pin them for the win. Grapples are contested by you and your opponent pressing buttons as fast as you can for the advantage, with the winner performing the move. Other than that, it's pretty basic and is easy to pick up and play. The graphics are honestly pretty good, with the characters resembling the wrestlers well, and the pixelated headshots coming across nicely as well. The music and sound effects are pretty basic, but they harm nobody. This is just a good old standard wrestling game for the console that can be fun, but I don't think people will think extensively about it after they put it down. Aw yeah! A port of WrestleMania the arcade game? This is awesome! Well, hold on there, Mark. There's some caveats to your excitement. WWF WrestleMania, the arcade game, was released in 1995 originally in arcades, but was given ports to the Genesis, 32X, PlayStation, Saturn, PC, and yes, the Super Nintendo by Acclaim and Midway. A fighting game wearing the clothes of a wrestling game. You control your chosen wrestler in pursuit of the belt, comically knocking your opponent sky high with an uppercut before you pin them in the middle of the ring. Yeah, if you didn't notice, this game has Midway's mitts all over it. The game is styled very similar to the Mortal Kombat franchise, with each wrestler represented by digitized graphics looking super realistic to the real-life character. Instead of going typically slow-paced wrestling experience, this game leans heavily into wacky with comical strikes being the standard attacks that are influenced by the wrestler's style, like Razor Ramon's hands literally turning into blades, or Doink hitting you with a comically large hammer. Wrestlers also have special moves similar to the MK fighting series, and suplexes can literally have wrestlers being thrown away like toddlers. With 8 playable characters complete with themes and voice samples intact, along with Vince McMahon on commentary, this game is an amazing play that's well worth your money. But that's for the arcade version. How does this translate to Super Nintendo? Well, starting out, instead of the 8 wrestlers, you get 6, with Yokozuna and Bam Bam Bigelow getting the boot. Well, you can excuse that, less powerful hardware and all. Something had to get the cut. That could be excusable, but did everything else have to get cut as well? The graphics get absolutely butchered in the port, with the sprites being smaller and more choppy feeling. The sound effects and music also get hammered, with less sound options and commentary lines in the port. The game is also noticeably slower, with it getting even more turtle-like the more sprites appear on screen, which is a particular annoyance during the 2-on-1 or 3-on-1 matches the game throws at you. The game is still fun, but these negatives definitely affected standing on the list. You're better off playing the PS1 or Saturn ports, which maintain at least most of the quality from the arcade. One of the couple of games not based upon a North American wrestling company, Hammerlock Wrestling, was released for the Super Nintendo in 1994 by Jaleco. Known in Japan as Tenryu Genichiro no Pro Wrestling Revolution, Hammerlock Wrestling was based upon the Japanese legend Genichiro Tenryu's promotion Wrestling Romance. All of the characters are based upon existing wrestlers, with changed characteristics and names, making them all look similar but not quite Temu knockoffs. When you start, you have the choice of a single and tags exhibition, a championship arcade ladder, a tournament mode, and a top-ranking match, which if you are familiar with the round-robin G1 style tournament, you'll be right at home. You start a match and holy shit, what is this visual overload? This looks awesome! For the first few matches at least. Your screen is divided into 3 sections, with you and your opponent's characters and awesome graphic cutscenes reacting to your moves at the top and bottom, and in between are the actual smaller sprites fighting, as well as the ref with no HUD dedicated to health, leaving the players to eyeball their sprite to see how tired they are. Every time a move is performed, the top and bottom graphics change to reflect as such, leading to a lot of visual noise that eventually becomes tiresome, and you'd wish you had an option to turn it off. But when it comes to combat, the control scheme most resembles most Japanese wrestling games, with the light, medium, and heavy strike buttons, as well as the locking up when you get close to an opponent. When you and your foe lock up, you both must rush to push a button first to perform a move without mashing, or else you automatically lose the tussle. This is a steep learning curve that admittedly I'm not the best at, and will probably turn away the most casual of players. For people who are able to grasp that, this game can be fun, though the graphical vomit will end up turning them away after a while. It's a tale of looking cool, but to the detriment of the overall product. Shame, as this game really tried something neat, but I don't think the eye mushiness is worth playing it. WWF Royal Rumble was released in 1993 for the Genesis and the Super Nintendo by Acclaim, Sculpture Software, and LOL. The direct sequel to WWF Super WrestleMania, WWF Royal Rumble adds in not only a bunch of positive quality of life changes, but also adds in new features, wrestlers, and match types to make a great wrestling experience. On top of the single match and tag team match from the previous game, this game also adds in the triple tag team match of 3-on-3, as well as the titular Royal Rumble match, which has all of the wrestlers coming in at staggered entry points to kick your ass. Each mode besides the Rumble can be contested as a standard match with standard rules, a brawl mode where the ref is gone and illegal moves in a chair can be used to knock your opponent out, and a tournament mode where you go through a tourney to win the belts of your choice. The amount of characters have increased last time as well, with each version boasted 5 exclusives, sadly not including Deep Fried Uncle Grandpa. In terms of gameplay, the button mashing nature of Super WrestleMania returns, now with a visual meter that will actually show you who has the advantage. Each character also gets a signature move, which makes actual differences between characters, so you aren't just choosing a different visual. All in all, Royal Rumble is just better in general than Super WrestleMania. While you lost Survivor Series mode in the move, the additions to this game make this a wholeheartedly worthy play that, spoiler alert, might get topped by the sequel. Another Japanese wrestling game converted over to us peasants in the West, Natsume Championship Wrestling, was released for the Super Nintendo in 1994 by Natsume, because of course it is. In Japan, this game was named Zen Nippon Pro Wrestling Sekai Seikyu Tag, or All Japan Pro Wrestling World's Strongest Tag Dash in English. This game was based upon the promotion All Japan Pro Wrestling, with all the wrestlers representing the roster at that point. Since the license didn't carry over to the West, the game was renamed Natsume Championship Wrestling, and all of the likenesses and names were adjusted just a bit, which gives it an advantage in that porting it to newer consoles is a lot less of a licensing headache. Anyway, you have your choice of single and tag tournament and round-robin competition along with a standard exhibition match at your disposal. Fighting is identical to Hammerlock Pro Wrestling, but holy crap, it's so much better on the eyes not going for the 3-screen approach. No, instead, Natsume Championship Wrestling focuses on the in-ring action, with a detailed wrestling environment, complete with the wrestlers, ref, commentary, and the screaming fans. Combat is also similar to other Japanese-style wrestling games, with different power strikes and quick twitch grapple button presses. The timing is a little less strict than Hammerlock, but it's still hard to grasp if you're new to the genre. Each character has different move combinations that will allow you to test and find your favorites pretty easily. Instead of focusing on the players, you get an actual health bar that will let you know when your wrestler is in danger, which helps out a lot. The game, while being difficult to master, is a fun time that eliminates all of the useless visual flair from Hammerlock, and really just delivers a different experience that everyone should check out, even if you aren't familiar with Japanese wrestling. Just know, Giant Baba might be renamed in this version, but he's still watching you. Menacingly. Okay. Putting this game number 2 might be a little bit controversial, but I mean no harm, I swear. Saturday Night Slam Masters is an awesome game that holds up through time, but is it the best wrestling game? Let's check it out. Saturday Night Slam Masters was released in 1993 for the arcades, Genesis, and Super Nintendo by Capcom. A wrestling-style fighting game, you control one of 8 characters, including the Honorable Mayor Mike Hagar from the Final Fight series, as you either go through a single or tag team match ladder through all of the other wrestlers, including the sub-boss Jumbo and the final boss the Scorpion, who aren't playable unless you play the tag team mode. Fighting is simple, with only 3 buttons needed to play, which are attack, grab, and jump. If you've played any of the Capcom beat-em-ups, especially Final Fight, you'll feel right at home in this game. You can run around the ring in 8 directions and attack in an attempt to reduce your opponent's health to 0 in order to pin them. Each character has their own moves, including a special technique and finisher to distinguish themselves with, as well as having their own attributes in wrestling style, such as the larger opponents being slower but more powerful, and the smaller luchadors being speedy on their feet but not as strong. It leads to simple combat, but it's so much fun. This game is one of the easiest to pick up and play with friends, with up to 4 being able to with a multi-tap. It's just a fun time in general. The visuals are amazing, with Capcom being able to lean into their fighting games for inspiration. It's such a good game, but as a whole experience, the lack of additional game modes really hurt this one. And if you aren't into the beat 'em up style, you'll probably have fun for a little bit, but get tired quickly. Both of these definitely do not make this game any less fun, though it falls a bit in regards to being the best wrestling game on the Super Nintendo. The culmination of all the WWF games on the Super Nintendo, WWF Raw is the best sort of combination of them all, and by extension, my favorite on the system. WWF Raw was released in 1994 for the Super Nintendo, Genesis, 32X, Game Boy, and Game Gear by Acclaim, Sculptured Software, and AVGN's favorite punching bag. The greatest of the trilogy, WWF Raw combines everything good about Super WrestleMania and Royal Rumble and jam-packs it in this game. For one, Tag, Survivor Series, and Royal Rumble matches return, along with Bedlam matches, which are essentially Tornado Tag matches, and Raw Endurance matches, which actually combine Survivor Series and the Rumble to absolute insanity. Each of the standard matches retain either the one fall, brawl, or tournament match options like in Royal Rumble, giving this game the edge in player's choice for modes. Characters as usual vary per platform, but new for this game, you get your first playable lady character, the legendary Luna Vachon. So you can settle all those playground disputes if Luna could take on Yokozuna. Anyway, combat has been expanded with each character having their own moveset beyond the signature and new mega moves that happen with a specific button combination. Also, each character has different stats depending on their speed, strength, stamina, and weight that affect gameplay beyond a surface level. The grapple system and visuals return as well, making combat flow pretty smoothly and makes it easy to play with anyone who's new to the series. As a whole, the game is a delightful mishmash of the previous LJN games that combines all of the additions and pretty much makes the other games obsolete. The only notable negative is the visual can be a little murky with each character sharing the same height, but if you don't mind that, I absolutely recommend WWF Raw as the best wrestling game on the Super Nintendo. Saturday Night Slam Masters is still a great game though. What do you think about the list? Am I wrong? Go leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you again, and I'll see you very soon.